It's another fabulous day here in Fun King Garage, and today I am working on the 55 Fairlane. I told you in previous videos that when I purchased this car, it had a Ford 9-inch rear end put in it. And that Ford 9-inch rear end was actually too wide for this car. Factory spacing on the rear axle was 57 inches face to face. The one that's in there is 59.5, which is causing the tires to rub on the wheel wells. And it's doing quite a bit of damage. So I got on the internet, and I'll give you about 3 seconds to figure out what's coming next. The fine folks over at Speedway Motors offers a few different rear ends in different sizes. So I hopped in there and I worked with Greg, the tech over there. Fabulous guy, by the way. Shout out to Greg. I ended up with a 54-inch face-to-face housing, cut-to-fit axles. And then I realized that the axles that I had in here were 28 spline, and the kit came with 31 splines. So now I also have a brand new third member, all 86 pounds of it. That is going to allow me to also have a 3.5 to 1 gear ratio instead of the 278 to 1 that the car had when I got it. So I now have the housing, the third member, and the axle shafts, but I needed a few other parts. I hopped onto Summit and picked up these axle saddles to allow me to fit it onto the 2-inch leaf springs. I also got U-bolts, which I made a mistake and ordered 3.25s, so I have to order new ones, but that was on me, that was not on Summit. And also, with every automotive project, you know as soon as you turn a bolt, a rabbit hole opens up and you fall into it. So I figured as long as I was underneath there, I would rework some stuff with the suspension as well. You see, the factory shocks on this car are studded on the top and the bottom. And those particular shocks are only for 50s and some 60s cars. And they're getting harder and harder to find. And I'm terrified that they're going to stop making them. So I figured while I was on Summit, I would grab some of these universal shock mounts that just has an eyelet, a 5/8 inch eyelet on them instead of having to have the stud. They were cheap enough, and this is going to allow me to pick whatever size shock that I can, fit in there, and also give me some better options. So while I'm in there, I'll go ahead and get those shock mounts changed out as well. But then I also noticed that the cross member underneath there from 55 was a little flimsy. So we're going to upgrade the cross member, put the shock mounts in, put in the whole new rear axle, and that will get my tires back where they're supposed to be, give me a better gear ratio. Oh, but let's talk about the brakes, because this car has drum brakes in the rear. Drum brakes that don't line up with these axle hubs anymore, because these are the large Torino style axle hubs. I can get new drum brakes, but for the cost of that, I'm putting a set of discs on the back. They're not here yet, and we'll talk more about that later because it's going to be pretty exciting. So discs in the back, discs in the front, 3.5 to 1 axle ratio, lots of bright and shiny parts. This is going to be a fun project. I have to say, it feels pretty weird cutting into a perfectly good exhaust system. Of course, I should probably clarify pretty good, or perfectly good. The way this exhaust system was put together was not ideal, and it doesn't necessarily fit correctly. So I was going to change out the rear portion of it anyway. I also found some problems with the front today. So, looks like we're getting a new exhaust system too. You know, there's a right way to do things, there's a wrong way to do things, and then there's a, what were you thinking when you did that? Oh, that's fun. That's already better. Now I got more room to work back there. But I'm going to go ahead and pull these fronts off too, because this side, it's a little shoddy, and I'll show you a shot of that when I get it out. This side is super questionable because they immediately came down, went into a 90, and then back into maybe a 45. Almost a 90, maybe a 70. But that pipe is pressed up against the floorboard, right where it comes out of the manifold. I don't really like that. Suppose I should put some PV Blaster on there. That's going to drip all over my floor. So I want to bring you up to speed on something else as well. Obviously this motor wasn't meant to be in this car. It's a 390. And when they set it in there, it's only at a 1.7 degree angle, which is fine. But it's also, the driver's side exhaust manifold is touching the power steering box. So I want to put a couple shims in there, and by raising the engine up, if it'll let me, I will not only gain another degree of angle on the motor, but hopefully it'll gain a little space between the exhaust manifold and the power steering gearbox. Any bets on whether the nut comes off or the stud comes out? Looks like the nuts are coming off. Now do note, I didn't give you the option for the broken stud. I didn't want that one. Ah, that PV Blaster's good stuff. May need some of that PV Blaster to get my socket off. Now I got it. I didn't think that was even going to give it any yoga duggas. I thought it was just going to spin off like that. So here is pipe number 1. And you can see, looks like we're coming from a 2-inch into a 2.5. We have some kind of a weird coupler here that looks like it was made out of, well, no, we're going from 2 to 2 1/4, a weird coupler made out of 2.5. And I mean, I'm not a pro welder, but these leave a lot to be desired. The exhaust donuts are very brittle as well, so it was time. Let's get this other side off. Hey, you guys remind me when I go to put that exhaust back in, I left the bolt in the bracket. Oh, nuts. And here's the other side that I was talking about. I don't know what that weird hoop in there was, unless that's all the parts they had left over. Yeah, we're going to take care of a whole lot of stuff when we're underneath here. Listen, I'm not perfect by any means, but I'm very thorough, and I don't like when things are left halfway. We're going to make some good changes. And at the point that we have to rebuild the whole entire exhaust, I think we're going to go from 2 1/4 to 2.5. 2.5 inch pipe seems cheaper anyway. I have a ton of space in here now. Lots of room for activities. This cross member, which is an original 1955, is actually pretty floppy. I'm going to cut that out and put a new cross member in. Both these shocks are going away to a more modern eyelet shock on each end, and of course the whole entire rear end is leaving us. Leaf springs will come out for that. It's going to get new bushings. Oh, and then we're going to have to put the whole exhaust system back. Oh yeah. Any of you out there know of a larger front anti-roll bar, anti-sway bar that fits a 55 Ford Fairlane? Drop that in the comments. This one, it's pretty tiny. Looks like maybe 5/8. I'd like to go up to a 7/8. Yeah, why not? Why not just switch over to what looks like a metric bolt? With just one. Yep, I think that's 13mm instead of a 1/2 inch. Anybody missing those? So that was in the splash shield. Pretty sure that won't focus. But that is a self-tapping metal screw. I don't believe that goes to this car. All right. A rot here that we're going to have to deal with in the future. I will leave that for a future me problem. There's also a huge dent in the bottom of the oil pan. Probably going to have to replace that eventually too. I'm willing to bet I can't get that pan out of here without lifting the engine. I've got one more shim in the engine mount on the driver's side than they do on the passenger side, and I thought it was to level it, but it's not level. So I was telling you about the exhaust manifold to the power steering box. And I can see light in between it other than one little tiny spot, which could be the thickness of a sheet of paper. But I would still like to bring this whole thing up. All right, stop screaming at your monitor. The point is, I put the stand under the back to counteract the off balance from the front. But I'm going to undo the motor mounts, and I'm going to use this to lift the motor to see if it's even feasible to put any type of shim in there. Again, I don't understand why they have an odd number of shims, but I'd like to fix that too. And keep in mind when I say they, it's whoever worked on this car beforehand, and I don't even know if it was the builder. Because some of the work on this car is really nice, and some of it looks like a guy who has never done anything even with an erector set. Well, at least one of those two bolts was tight. The first one wasn't. Oh, that one was good and tight. I wasn't sure if that was the bolt popping or my back. This one I have to fight the starter. I probably should have disconnected the battery. Oh, good. 3-year-old tightened that one. Alright, so I'm learning. This car, I'm going to have to go over every nut and bolt and tighten them up. The U-joint U-bolts were just beyond finger tight. So out of 4 motor mount bolts, one was tight. The other one were a joke. Yeah, it's not very convenient that they put all these steering linkages in the way. This is where those flex head ratcheting wrenches would sure come in handy. See how loose that is? That's a motor mount bolt. It's like they just put it in there and thought, I'll go back and get it later, and then never did. This is ridiculous, Mike.
What's going on?
Every bolt on this car is loose. Like they just didn't even bother. I know, I'm putting a rear end in the car.
Oh, your rear end's on camera. I don't know if the car rear
Oh, this isn't where the rear end is? Like maybe they put the second one over here, but it tilted it back and it made contact.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put my own shims underneath there and raise the whole thing up, hopefully about 1/4 of an inch. Or no, 1/2 inch. And then it will add 1 degree to the engine pitch, which will put us at 2.7 instead of 1.7, which makes me feel better because it should be about 3. And also, it may give me a little more room to that steering box.
Yeah.
Or it might all be for naught, and here we are. It was scary. So of the 4 bolts that went into the motor, 1 was like Gorilla tight, and the other 3 a 3-year-old did them. I mean, with plastic tools nonetheless. Why couldn't I put the spacer between the engine mount and the block? Keep hitting my head. I could put the plate in between here. You see the plates here?
Mm-hmm.
So I could put the plate in here.
But you've got more than a half.
No, with the flat washer, lock washer, and nut, it was pretty much there.
So take out the flat washer and just use the lock washer and nut.
Are you the guy that built this car the first time? Because that's what it sounds like.
So you got to get the engine in and set right to gauge it before you can.
Yeah, so I want to fix that clearance issue. But if I fix the clearance issue after the fact,
Then you're
I have to put the shims on the motor and the transmission, bringing the whole thing up. As where if I do it now, I only have to bring up the front, which will level out the intake manifold, which is the way it's supposed to be. And then I don't have to worry about the rear end being not correct. Because I can set the rear end to what it is now, you know.
Yeah.
There's one.
There's your spacer.
You see that, yeah?
Yes.
I should probably show that to the camera because that's not even a proper engine shim. I don't know. I don't think that other shim is a shim. I think it's the bottom of the engine mount. So they shimmed this side and didn't shim this side at all. That's actually good news. I got like a good eighth, maybe 3/16 of an inch in there now. And up a little bit. It looks like that fan has touched that pulley. There's like a mark around the front of that pulley, like it had rubbed. There they are. So now I know how far that is. I'm thinking a 2-inch wide plate, 1/4 inch thick, this long. How much space does it look like I have in there? I'm sure I have a piece of quarter material. I can double check that. Yeah, quarter's going to be brilliant.
And that'll give you enough clearance.
I think so. I think when I let it back down. If it doesn't, it would be a very thin shim otherwise. Like maybe another 1/16. Because I was originally thinking half. Half would give me 1 degree. So 1/4 is going to give me a 1/2 degree, which is going to put me to what, 2.2. In theory, this was all done, you know, based on measurements and math. So I can't get my fat fingers up in there to know if it's going to work on this side. That's 3/8 inch flat stock that I'm going to make the shims out of. It's going to go with 1/4. I didn't have any. So I felt that 3/8 would be better. I'll make it work. Now, I bought a Swag Off-Road Portaband kit to turn my portable bandsaw that I just bought into a metal cutting bandsaw table. But it won't be here for 4 days, so Here I am. So after thinking about this, I did make one critical mistake. I don't know that both motor mounts are the same. I assumed they were, and we all know what that leads to, so we'll see. I mean, if not, I got 3 feet of this material. I'll just make another one. Okay, so I got my new spacers put in there, my new shims. They're a little thick for shims. I have 1/8 of an inch between the exhaust manifold and that steering box, which thrills me to no end. The motor looks like it's sitting fine. The only thing that's questionable is that front pulley to the electric fan. It may be touching, but I can deal with that. So now the sad part is I got to pull those brackets back out, those shims back out, so I can paint them. Well, they're all painted. Back in they're going. Probably didn't give them adequate time to dry, but it's one of those situations where I can see or I can reach, but I can't do both. See, we'll get the other side and we'll get it all set. Just in case you're wondering what it ended up looking like. It's just a 3/8 inch thick block with 2 holes drilled in it. Sometimes the best designs are the simplest. Oh, I hope this works after all of this. I realized I could lower the car. It's on a lift. But then I'll hit my head more often. No, yeah. Hopefully these bolts aren't too long. We'll find out momentarily. As long as we're in there over 1 inch. These are 1.5 inches, and I'm going through a 3/8 plate, so you can do the math. Looks like they're gonna work. Oh, these brake lines and stuff are so bad. They were not done right. This side would be much easier without the starter in the way, but not a big fan of taking a bunch of stuff out that I don't need to. Now you can't see my feet, but I have a 2x block on the floor to step up on. That's what I was talking about, hitting my head. With this shoulder not working, it's kind of hard to reach sometimes. She's going in, she's just slow. It's a slow process. This front steering needs to all be cleaned up and double checked and greased. It's a beautiful car though, I sure love it. And I haven't even really driven it yet. I should make it clear that all the crabbing that I do about the car isn't really about the car. It's about the people that came before me that did this work incorrectly. I'm gonna need 2 showers tonight. One to get clean and one to get the stuff I missed. We're getting there. Tecton should make a set of sockets that are only as deep as the head of the bolt, you know, plus the drive. Just for stuff like this. I'd buy a set. Probably in standard and metric. Alright. Oof. Puffed up. This can come down. Yeah, it looks like somebody put a jack underneath that oil pan and caved it in a little. Either a new oil pan or a rework to that one is definitely in the future, but that's got to come after this project. This project is already rabbit holed terribly. It's funny. This side, it's really hard to get to the top on the motor mount. Now I'm looking at it. It would have been easier if they would have flipped the motor mounts the other way. I don't know how they're supposed to go, but anyway, I digress. I couldn't get them out of there anyway, but the lower bolts are easy to get to on this side. The uppers are hard. The uppers are easy, the lowers are hard. All right, I want to double check those tops and make sure those tops are tight. Yeah, this side's just difficult because of the oil filter. Fram. Oof. All right, now I just got to figure out how to really put the onions to these up here just to make sure they're tight. Yeah, they're tight. I'll take that. Yep. I can finally now start working on the rear end of the car. So no, the next step is I'm going to bring it back down onto the cribbing blocks and get under and now check the pinion angle again. And I got to figure out if that fan is an issue. It looks like the water pump pulley is absolutely touching the electric fan. And I don't want it to end up doing any damage. So when I get it down, I'm going to take a look at that. And I can also check the new sorry, not pinion angle, but driveline angle, so I can set the new pinion properly. So now with the nose of the engine up, the 3/8 of an inch or whatever it actually works out to, you know, geometrically, the water pump pulley was rubbing just this little bit on the fan. So I'm actually going to just trim this out a little bit, and it won't hurt anything. Nothing's going to get in there. Nobody's going to put their finger in there. And then I got perfect clearance. So I trimmed out just a little bit of the outer edge and this one little vein right here. So now we're going to see if that fits. Perfect. No more clearance issues. Now, sadly, I was not able to remove the little plastic mounts, the zip ties that go through there, without damaging them. So I had to wait till morning to go pick some up from the local parts house, because it's already like 10 p.m. which I guess that means I need to go eat some dinner, get some sleep, and we'll get cranking back in the morning. Well, some terrible things have happened, and it's been weeks. No, not really. It's the next morning, and it is bright and early, and it is a beautiful day. It's time to get rolling back on this. Now, I did slide underneath there before I turned the camera on, and I took another measurement at the tail shaft of my transmission just after the car has now sat overnight, and I came up with a final measurement of 2.3 degrees, and that is where I'm going to set my pinion for my driveline. And I think this is where we need to end today's episode. You see, there's so much content related to this project that this episode could be infinitely long. Now, I know I'm putting a rear end in this car, and yet everything I did in this episode was in the front, but it's absolutely critical for me to get that engine and transmission driveline angle set now, so that I can get my pinion angle set and not have to worry about changing things in the future. Plus, getting that engine off of the power steering box, definite bonus. I want to take an opportunity to say thank you from the bottom of my heart and tell you how much I appreciate you being here. Whether you are a new viewer or a returning viewer, thank you. Thank you to each and every one of you, and I mean it. But now, if you haven't yet hit that subscribe button, I'd love for you to hit that subscribe button, ring that bell for notifications, and a thumbs up is always appreciated as well. And you know what? That comment section is down there for you. Drop me a note. And until next time, thanks for watching.